Welcome. This is a bit of a new video idea, so I hope you can enjoy it. I'll be reading the Wikipedia article for sleep. Sleep from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. This article is about sleep in humans. For non-human sleep, see sleep in animals. For other uses, see sleep disambiguation. Asleep and slept, redirect here. For other uses, see asleep disambiguation and slept analysis. Sleep is a naturally recurring state of mind and body, characterized by altered consciousness, relatively inhibited sensory activity, reduced muscle activity, and inhibition of nearly all voluntary muscles during rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, and reduced interactions with surroundings. It is distinguished from wakefulness by a decreased ability to react to stimuli, but more reactive than a coma or disorders of consciousness, with sleeping displaying different active brain patterns. Sleep occurs in repeating periods in which the body alternates between two distinct modes, REM sleep and non-REM sleep. Although REM stands for rapid eye movement, this mode of sleep has many other aspects, including virtual paralysis of the body. A well-known feature of sleep is the dream, an experience typically recounted in narrative form, which resembles walking life while in progress, but which usually can later be distinguished as fantasy. During sleep, most of the body's systems are in an anabolic state, helping to restore immune, nervous, skeletal, and muscular systems. These are vital processes that maintain mood, memory, and cognitive function, and play a large role in the function of the endocrine and immune systems. The internal circadian clock promotes sleep daily at night. The device purposes and mechanisms of sleep are the subject of substantial ongoing research. Sleep is a highly conserved behavior across animal evolution. Humans may suffer from various sleep disorders, including dysomnias such as insomnia, hypersomnia, narcolepsy, and sleep apnea, parasomnias such as sleepwalking and rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder, bruxism, and circadian rhythm sleep disorders. The use of artificial light has substantially altered humanity's sleep patterns. Common sources of artificial light include the screens of electronic devices, such as smartphones and televisions, which emit large amounts of blue light, a form of light typically associated with daytime. This disrupts the release of the hormone melatonin, needed to regulate the sleep cycle. Physiology. Main article, Neuroscience of Sleep. The most pronounced physiological changes in sleep occur in the brain. The brain uses significantly less energy during sleep than it does when awake, especially during non-REM sleep. In areas with reduced activity, the brain restores its supply of adenosine triphosphate, the molecule used for short-term storage and transportation of energy. In quiet waking, the brain is still responsible for 20% of the body's energy use. Thus, this reduction has a noticeable effect on the overall energy consumption. Sleep increases the sensory threshold. In other words, sleeping persons perceive fewer stimuli, but can generally still respond to loud noises and other salient sensory events. During slow wave sleep, humans secrete bursts of growth hormone. All sleep, even during the day, is associated with the secretion of prolactin. Key physiological methods for monitoring and measuring changes during sleep include EEG of brain waves, EOG, of eye movement, and EMG of skeletal muscle activity. Simultaneous collection of these measurements is called polysomnography and can be performed in a specialized sleep laboratory. Sleep researchers also use simplified electrocardiography for cardiac activity and antigraphy for motor movements. Brain waves in sleep. The electrical activity seen on an EEG is called brain waves. It has been revealed that the intensity of EEG waves on a frequency is related to one's sleep-wake cycle, meaning that the body is linked to certain waves at certain points during a person's day, such as being asleep, falling asleep, being awake. The model EEG waveforms seen are alpha waves, beta waves, theta waves, gamma waves, and delta waves are all seen in the different stages of sleep. Each different wave maintains a different frequency and amplitude. Alpha waves are seen when a person is in a resting state, but is still fully conscious. Their eyes may be closed, and all of their body is resting and relatively still, where the body is starting to slow down. Beta waves take over alpha waves when a person is at attention, as they might be completing a task or concentrating on something. Beta waves consist of the highest of frequencies and the lowest of amplitude. At this point, a person is fully alert. Alpha and beta waves are the only waves seen when a person is in the awake state. Gamma waves are seen when a person is highly focused on a task or using all their concentration. Theta waves occur during the period of a person being awake, and they continue to transition into stage 1 of sleep and in stage 2. Delta waves are seen in stages 3 and 4 of sleep when a person is in the deepest of sleep. Non-REM and REM sleep. Sleep is divided into two broad types: non-rapid eye movement, non-REM, or REM sleep, and rapid eye movement, REM sleep. Non-REM and REM sleep are so different that physiologists identify them as distinct behavioral states. Non-REM sleep occurs first and after a transitional period is called slow wave sleep or deep sleep. During this phase, body temperature and heart rate fall, and the brain uses less energy. REM sleep, also known as paradoxical sleep, represents a smaller portion of total sleep time. It is the main occasion for dreams or nightmares, and is associated with desynchronized and fast brain waves, eye movements, loss of muscle tone, and suspension of homeostasis. The sleep cycle of alternative NREM and REM sleep takes an average of 90 minutes, occurring 4 to 6 times in a good night's sleep. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine, AASM, divides NREM into 3 stages: N1, N2, and N3. The last of which is also called delta sleep or slow wave sleep. The whole period normally proceeds in the order N1, N2, N3, N2, REM. REM sleep occurs as a person returns to stage 2 or 1 from a deep sleep. There is a greater amount of deep sleep, stage N3, earlier in the night, while the proportion of REM sleep increases in the 2 cycles just before natural awakening. Awakening. Waking up redirects here. For other users, see Waking Up disambiguation. Further information, wakefulness, and ascending reticle activating system. Awakening can mean the end of sleep, or simply a movement to survey the environment and readjust body position before falling back to sleep. Sleepers typically awaken soon after the end of a REM phase or sometimes in the middle of REM. Internal circadian indicators, along with a successful reduction of homeostatic sleep need, typically bring about awakening and the end of the sleep cycle. Awakening involves heightened electrical activation in the brain, beginning with the thalamus and spreading through the cortex. During a night's sleep, a small amount of time is usually spent in the waking state, as measured by electrosynaptography. Young females are awake for 0 to 1% of the larger sleeping period. Young males are awake for 0 to 2%. In adults, wakefulness increases, especially in later cycles. One study found 3% awake time in the first 90-minute sleep cycle, 8% in the second, 10% in the third, 12% in the fourth, and 13 to 14% in the fifth. Most of this awake time occurred shortly after REM sleep. Today, many humans wake up with an alarm clock. However, people can also reliably wake themselves up at a specified time with no need for an alarm. Many sleep quite differently on work days versus days off, a pattern which can lead to chronic circadian desynchronization. Many people regularly look at television and other screens before going to bed, a factor which may exacerbate disruption of the circadian cycle. Scientific studies on sleep have shown that sleep stage at awakening is an important factor in amplifying sleep inertia. Timing. Sleep timing is controlled by the circadian clock, process C, sleep-wake homeostasis, process S, and to some extent by the individual will. Circadian clock. Main article, circadian rhythm. Further information, circadian rhythm sleep disorder. Sleep timing depends greatly on hormonal signals from the circadian clock, or process C, a complex neurochemical system which uses signals from an organism's environment to recreate an internal day-night rhythm. Process C counteracts the homeostatic drive for sleep during the day in diurnal animals and augments it at night. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, a brain area directly above the optic chiasm, is presently considered the most important nexus for this process. However, secondary clock systems have been found throughout the body. An organism whose circadian clock exhibits a regular rhythm corresponding to outside signals is said to be entrained. An entrained rhythm persists even if the outside signals suddenly disappear. If an entrained human is isolated in a bunker with constant light or darkness, he or she will continue to experience rhythmic increases and decreases of body temperature and melatonin on a period that slightly exceeds 24 hours. Scientists refer to such conditions as free running of the circadian rhythm. Under natural conditions, light signals regularly adjust this period downward so that it corresponds better with the exact 24 hours of a nerve day. The circadian clock exerts constant influence on the body, affecting sinusoidal oscillation of body temperature between roughly 36.2 Celsius and 37.2 Celsius. The suprachiasmatic nucleus itself shows conspicuous oscillation activity, which intensifies during subjective day, i.e., the part of the rhythm corresponding with daytime, whether accurately or not, and drops to almost nothing during subjective night. The circadian pacemaker in the suprachiasmatic nucleus has a direct neural connection to the pineal gland, which releases the hormone melatonin at night. Cortisol levels typically rise throughout the night, peak in the awakening hours, and diminish during the day. Circadian prolactin secretion begins in the late afternoon, especially in women, and is subsequently augmented by sleep-induced secretion to peak in the middle of the night. Circadian rhythm exerts some influence on the nighttime secretion of growth hormone. The circadian rhythm influences the ideal timing of a restorative sleep episode. Sleepiness increases during the night. REM sleep occurs more during body temperature minimum within the circadian cycle, whereas slow wave sleep can occur more independently of circadian time. The internal circadian clock is profoundly influenced by changes in light, since these are its main clues about what time it is. Exposure, even to tiny small amounts of light during the night, can suppress melatonin secretion and increase body temperature and wakefulness. Short pulses of light at the right moment in the circadian cycle can significantly reset the internal clock. Blue light, in particular, exerts the strongest effect, leading to concerns that electronic media use before bed may interfere with sleep. Modern humans often find themselves desynchronized from the internal circadian clock due to the requirements of work, especially night shifts, long distance travel, and the influence of universal indoor lighting. Even if they have sleep debt or feel sleepy, people can have difficulty staying asleep at the peak of their circadian cycle. Conversely, they can have difficulty waking up throughout the cycle. A healthy young adult entrained to the sun will, during most of the year, fall asleep a few hours after sunset, experience body temperature minimum at 6 a.m., and wake up a few hours after sunrise. Process S. Main article, sleep debt. Generally speaking, the longer an organism is awake, the more it feels the need to sleep debt. This driver of sleep is referred to process S. The balance between sleeping and waking is regulated by a process called homeostasis. Induced or perceived lack of sleep is called sleep deprivation. Process S is driven by the depletion of glycogen and accumulation of adenosine in the forebrain that disinhibits the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, allowing for inhibition of the ascending reticle activating system. Sleep deprivation tends to cause slower brain waves in the frontal cortex, shortened attention span, higher anxiety, impaired memory, and a grouchy mood. Conversely, a well-rested organism tends to have improved memory and mood. Neurophysiological and functional imaging studies have demonstrated that frontal regions of the brain are particularly responsive to homeostatic sleep pressure. There is a disagreement on how much sleep debt is possible to accumulate and whether sleep debt is accumulated against an individual's average sleep or some other benchmark. It is also unclear whether the prevalence of sleep debt among adults has changed appreciably in the industrialized world in recent decades. Sleep debt does show some evidence of being cumulative. Subjectively, however, humans seem to react to maximum sleepiness after 30 hours of waking up. It is likely that in Western societies, children are sleeping less than they previously have. One neurochemical indicator of sleep debt is adenosine, a neurotransmitter that inhibits many of the bodily processes associated with wakefulness. Adenosine levels increase in the cortex and basal forebrain during prolonged wakefulness and decrease during the sleep recovery period, potentially acting as a homeostatic regulator of sleep. Coffee and caffeine temporarily block the effect of adenosine, prolong sleep latency, and reduce total sleep time and quality. Social timing. Humans are also influenced by aspects of social time, such as the hours when other people are awake, the hours when work is required, the time on the clock, etc. Time zones. Standard times used to unify the timing for people in the same area correspond only approximately to the natural rising and setting of the sun. The approximate nature of the time zone can be shown with China, a country which used to span 5 time zones and now officially only uses one, UTC plus 8. Distribution. In polyphasic sleep, an organism sleeps several times in a 24-hour cycle, whereas monophasic sleep, this occurs all at once. Under experimental conditions, humans tend to alternate more frequently between sleep and wakefulness, i.e., exhibit more polyphasic sleep, if they have nothing better to do. Given a 14-hour period of darkness in experimental conditions, humans tend towards bimodal sleep, with 2 sleep periods concentrated at the beginning and at the end of the dark time. Bimodal sleep in humans was more common before the Industrial Revolution. Different characteristic sleep patterns, such as familiarly so-called early bird and night owl, are called chronotypes. Genetics and sex have some influence on chronotype, but so do habits. Chronotype is also liable to change over the course of a person's lifetime. 7-year-olds are better disposed to wake up early in the morning than are 15-year-olds. Chronotypes far outside the normal range are called circadian rhythm sleep disorders. Naps. Main article, nap. This is a short period of sleep that one might take during the daytime in order to get the necessary amount of rest. As we start taking naps at a young age, most people assume you grow out of this phase of sleeping pattern, yet around 1/3 of American adults partake in this daily. The right amount of nap time is around 10 to 20 minutes, as researchers have proven that it takes at least 30 minutes to enter the slow wave sleep where one is at their deepest of sleep. If one naps for too long, getting into the slow wave cycles, it can be hard to wake from this nap and leaving one feeling unrested. This is called sleep inertia, which means that one would be in a state of drowsiness for a period of time. Each nap can be taken for various reasons. Some have categorized them into types of naps. These categories include recovery, prophylactic, appetitive, fulfillment, and essential. A recovery nap is a way to make up for sleep loss. Prophylactic is meant to prevent. So, in napping terms, this means to get sleep needed before an anticipated long period of being awake. An appetitive nap are simply taken because a person simply enjoys the activity of napping. Fulfillment naps are exactly how it sounds. Naps taken to fulfill your body. These are often seen as scheduled naps, but can also occur at any time of the day, when a person becomes in need of rest. The naps taken when one is sick and needs extra rest in order for their body's immune system to heal are essential naps. The siesta habit has recently been associated with a 30% lower coronal mortality, possibly due to the reduced cardiovascular stress mediated by daytime sleep. Short naps at midday and mild evening exercise were found to be effective for improved sleep, cognitive tasks, and mental health in elderly people. Genetics. Monozygotic, identical but not dizygotic fraternal twins tend to have similar sleep habits. Neurotransmitters, molecules whose production can be traced to specific genes, are one genetic influence on sleep that can be analyzed. The circadian clock has its own set of genes. Genes which may influence sleep include ABCC9, DEC2, dopamine receptor D2, and variants near PAX8 and VRK2. While the latter have been found in GWAS study that primarily detects correlations but not necessarily causation, other genes have been shown to have more of a direct effect. For instance, mice lacking dihydropyrimidine dehydrogenase DPYD had 78.4 minutes less sleep during the lights off period than wild type mice. DPYD encodes the rate limiting enzyme in the metabolic pathway that catabolizes uracil and thymine to beta alanine, and inhibitory neurotransmitter. This also supports the role of beta alanine as a neurotransmitter that promotes sleep in mice. Quality. The quality of sleep may be evaluated from an objective and a subjective point of view. Objective sleep quality refers to how difficult it is for a person to fall asleep and remain in a sleeping state, and how many times they wake up during a single night. Poor sleep quality disrupts the cycle of transition between the different stages of sleep. Subjective sleep quality, in turn, refers to a sense of being rested and regenerated after awaking from sleep. A study by A. Harvey et al. 2002 found that insomniacs were more demanding in their evaluations of sleep quality than individuals who had no sleep problems. Homeostatic sleep prosperity, the need for sleep as a function for the amount of time elapsed since the last adequate sleep episode, must be balanced against the circadian element of satisfactory sleep, along with the corresponding messages for the circadian clock that this tells the body it needs to sleep. The timing is correct when the following two circadian markers occur after the middle of the sleep episode and before awakening: maximum concentration of the hormone melatonin and minimum core body temperature. Ideal duration. Human sleep needs vary by age and amongst individuals. Sleep is considered to be adequate when there is no daytime sleepiness or dysfunction. Moreover, self-reported sleep duration is only moderately correlated with actual sleep time as measured by angiography, and those affected by sleep misperception may typically report having slept only 4 hours despite having slept a full 8 hours. Researchers have found that sleeping 6 to 7 hours each night correlates with longevity and cardiac health in humans, though many underlying factors may be involved in the causality behind this relationship. Sleep difficulties are furthermore associated with psychiatric disorders such as depression, alcoholism, and bipolar disorder. Up to 90% of adults with depression have found to have sleep difficulties. Dysregulation detected by EEG includes disturbances in sleep continually, decreased delta sleep, and altered REM patterns with regard to latency, distribution across the night, and density of eye movements. Sleep duration can also vary according to season. Up to 90% of people report sleep longer duration in winter, which may lead to more pronounced seasonal affective disorder. Children. By the time infants reach the age of 2, the brain size has reached 90% of an adult-sized brain. A majority of this brain growth has occurred during the period of life with the highest rate of sleep. The hours that children spend asleep influence their ability to perform on cognitive tasks. Children who sleep through the night and have few night waking episodes have higher cognitive attainments and easier temperaments than other children. Sleep also influences language development. To test this, researchers taught infants a fox language and observed the recollection of the rules for that language. Infants who slept within 4 hours of learning that language could remember the language rules better, while infants who stayed awake longer did not recall those rules as well. There is also a relationship between infants' vocabulary and sleeping. Infants who sleep longer at night at 12 months have better vocabularies at 26 months. Children can greatly benefit from a structured bedtime routine. This can look differently among families, but will generally consist of a set of rituals such as reading a bedtime story, a bath, brushing teeth, and can also include a show of affection from the parent to the child, such as a hug or a kiss before bed. A bedtime routine will also include a consistent time that the child is expected to be in bed ready for sleep. Having a reliable bedtime routine can help improve a child's quality of sleep as well as prepare them to make and keep healthy sleep hygiene habits in the future. Hours of sleep. Children need many hours of sleep per day in order to develop and function properly, up to 18 hours for newborn babies, with a declining rate as a child ages. Early in 2015, after a 2-year study, the National Sleep Foundation in the US announced newly revised recommendations as shown in the table below. Hours of sleep recommended for each age group. Age and condition, sleep needs. Newborns, 0 to 3 months, 14 to 17 hours. Infants, 4 to 11 months, 12 to 15 hours. Toddlers, 1 to 2 years, 11 to 14 hours. Preschoolers, 3 to 4 years, 10 to 13 hours. School-aged children, 5 to 12 years, 9 to 11 hours. Teenagers, 13 to 17, 8 to 10 hours. Adults, 18 through 64 years, 7 to 9 hours. Older adults, 65 years and over, 7 to 8 hours. Functions. Restoration. The human organism physically restores itself during sleep, occurring mostly during slow wave sleep, during which body temperature, heart rate, and brain oxygen consumption decrease in both the brain and body. The reduced rate of metabolism enables countervailing restorative processes. The brain requires sleep for restoration, whereas these processes can take place during quiescent waking in the rest of the body. The essential function of sleep may be its restorative effect on the brain. Sleep is of the brain, by the brain, and for the brain. This theory is strengthened by the fact that sleep is observed to be a necessary behavior across most of the animal kingdom, including some of the least evolved animals, which have no need for other functions of sleep, such as memory consolidation or dreaming. While awake, brain metabolism generates end products such as reactive oxygen species, which may be damaging to brain cells and inhibit their proper function. During sleep, metabolic rates decrease and reactive oxygen species generation is reduced, enabling restorative processes. The sleeping brain has been shown to remove metabolic end processes at a faster rate than during an awake state. The mechanism for this removal appears to be the glymphatic system. Sleep may facilitate the synthesis of molecules that help repair and protect the brain from metabolic end products generated from waking. Anabolic hormones, such as growth hormones, are secreted preferentially during sleep. The brain concentration of glycogen increases during sleep and is depleting through metabolism during wakefulness. The effect of sleep duration on somatic growth is not completely known. One study recorded growth, height, and weight as correlated to parent-reported time in bed in 305 children over a period of 9 years, age 1 through 10. It was found that the variation of sleep duration among children does not seem to have an effect on growth. Slow wave sleep affects growth hormone levels in adult men. During 8 hours of sleep, men with high percentage of slow wave sleep, average of 24%, also had high growth hormone secretion, while subjects with a low percentage of SWS, average of 9%, had low growth hormone secretion. Memory processing. Further information, sleep and memory. Neuroscience of Sleep, and Sleep and Learning. It has been widely accepted that sleep must support the foundation of long-term memory, and generally increasing previous learning and experience recalls. However, its benefits seems to depend on the phase of sleep and the type of memory. For example, declarative and procedural memory recall tasks applied over early and late nocturnal sleep, as well as wakefulness-controlled conditions, have been shown that declarative memory improves more during early sleep, dominated by SWS, while procedural memory during late sleep, dominated by REM sleep, does so. With regard to declarative memory, the functional role of SWS has been associated with hippocampal replays of previously encoded neural patterns that seem to facilitate long-term memory consolidation. This assumption is based on the active system consolidation hypothesis, which states that repeated reactivations of newly encoded information in the hippocampus during slow oscillations of NREM sleep mediate the stabilization and gradual integration of declarative memory with pre-existing knowledge networks on the cortical level. It assumes the hippocampus might hold information only temporarily and in a fast learning rate, whereas the neocortex is related to long-term storage and a slow learning rate. This dialogue between the hippocampus and neocortex occurs in parallel with hippocampal sharp wave ripples and thalamocortical spindles. Synchrony that drives the formation of the spindle ripple effect, which seems to be a prerequisite for the formation of long-term memories. Reactivation of memory also occurs during wakefulness, and its function is associated with serving to update the reactivated memory with newly encoded information, whereas reactivations of SWS are presented as crucial for memory stabilization. Based on targeted memory reactivation (TMR) experiments that use associated memory cues to triggering memory traces during sleep. Several studies have been reassuring the importance of nocturnal reactivations for the formation of persistent memories in neocortical networks, as well as highlighting the possibility of increasing people's memory performance at declarative recalls. Furthermore, nocturnal reactivation seems to share the same neural oscillarity patterns as reactivation during wakefulness, processes which might be correlated by theta activity. During wakefulness, theta oscillations have been often related to successful performance in memory tasks, and cue memory reactivations during sleep have been showing that theta activity is significantly stronger in subsequent recognition of cued stimuli as compared to uncued ones, possibly indicating a strengthening of memory traces and lexical integration by cueing during sleep. However, the beneficial effect of TMR for memory consolidation seems to occur only if the cued memories can be related to prior knowledge. Dreaming. Main article, dream. During sleep, especially REM sleep, humans tend to experience dreams. These are elusive and mostly unpredictable first-person experiences which seem logical and realistic to the dreamer while they are in progress, despite their frequently bizarre, irrational, and/or surreal qualities that become apparent after waking. Dreams often seamlessly incorporate concepts, situations, people, and objects within a person's mind that would not normally go together. They can include apparent sensations of all types, especially vision and movement. Dreams tend to rapidly fade from memory after waking. Some people choose to keep a dream journal, which they believe helps them build dream recall and facilitate the ability to experience lucid dreams. People have proposed many hypotheses about the functions of dreaming. Sigmund Freud postulated that dreams are a symbolic expression of frustrated desires that have been regulated to the unconscious mind. And he used dream interpretation in the form of psychoanalysis in attempting to uncover these desires. Counterintuitively, penile erections during sleep are not more frequent during sexual dreams than during other dreams. The parasympathetic nervous system experiences during increased activity during REM sleep, which may cause erection of the penis or the clitoris. In males, 80% to 95% of REM sleep is normally accompanied by partial to full penile erection, while only about 12% of men's dreams contain sexual content. John Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley propose that dreams are caused by the random firing of neurons in the cerebral cortex during the REM period. Neatly, this theory helps explain the irrationality of the mind during REM periods, as according to this theory, the forebrain then creates a story in an attempt to reconcile and make sense of this nonsensical sensory information presented to it. This would explain the odd nature of many dreams. Disorders. Insomnia. Main article, insomnia. See also, psychological stress and sleep. Insomnia is a general term for difficulty falling asleep and or staying asleep. Insomnia is the most common sleep problem, with many adults reporting occasional insomnia and 10 to 15 reporting a chronic condition. Insomnia can have many causes, including psychological stress, a poor sleep environment, an inconsistent sleep schedule, or excessive mental or physical stimulation in the hours before bedtime. Insomnia is often treated through behavioral changes like keeping a regular sleep schedule, avoiding stimulating or stressful activities before bedtime, and cutting down on stimulants such as caffeine. The sleep environment may be improved by installing heavy drapes to shut out all sunlight, and keeping computers, televisions, and work materials out of the sleeping area. A 2012 review of published scientific research suggests that exercise generally improves sleep for most people and helps sleep disorders such as insomnia. The optimum time to exercise may be 4 to 8 hours before bedtime, though exercise at any time of the day is beneficial, with the exception of heavy exercise taken shortly before bedtime, which may disturb sleep. However, there is insufficient evidence to draw detailed conclusions about the relationship between exercise and sleep. Sleeping medications such as Ambien and Lunesta are an increasingly popular treatment for insomnia, though these non-benzodiazepine medications are generally believed to be better and safer than earlier generations of sedatives. They still have generated some controversy and discussion regarding side effects. White noise appears to be promising treatment for insomnia. Obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is a condition in which major pauses in breathing occur during sleep, disrupting the normal progression of sleep and often causing other more severe health problems. Apneas occur when the muscles around the patient's airway relax during sleep, causing the airway to collapse and block the intake of oxygen. Obstructive sleep apnea is more common than central sleep apnea. As oxygen levels in the blood drop, the patient then comes out of deep sleep in order to resume breathing. When several of these episodes occur per hour, sleep apnea rises to a level of seriousness that may require treatment. Diagnosing sleep apnea usually requires a professional sleep study performed in a sleep clinic. Because of the episodes of wakefulness caused by disorder are extremely brief and the patients usually do not remember experiencing them. Instead, many patients simply feel tired after getting several hours of sleep and have no idea why. Major risk factors for sleep apnea include chronic fatigue, old age, obesity, and snoring. Aging and sleep. People over 60 with prolonged sleep, 8 to 10 hours or more, average sleep duration of 7 to 8 hours in the elderly, have a 33% increased risk of all-cause mortality and 43% increased risk of cardiovascular diseases, while those with short sleep, less than 7 hours, have a 6% increased risk of all-cause mortality. Sleep disorders, including sleep apnea, insomnia, or periodic limb movements, occur more commonly in the elderly, each possibly impacting sleep quality and duration. A 2017 review indicated that older adults do not need less sleep, but rather have an impaired ability to obtain their sleep needs, and may be able to deal with sleepiness better than younger adults. Various practices are recommended to mitigate sleep disturbances in the elderly, such as having a light bedtime snack, avoidance of caffeine, daytime naps, excessive evening stimulation, and tobacco products, and using regular bedtime and wake schedules. Other disorders. Sleep disorders include narcolepsy, periodic limb movement disorder, PLMD, restless leg syndrome, RLS, upper airway resistance syndrome, UARS, and the circadian rhythm sleep disorders. Fatal familial insomnia, or FFI, an extremely rare genetic disease with no known treatment or cure, is characterized by insomnia as one of its symptoms. Ultimately, sufferers of the disease stop sleeping entirely before dying of the disease. Somnambulism, known as sleepwalking, is a sleeping disorder, especially among children. Sleep health. See also sleep hygiene. Low quality sleep has been linked with health conditions like cardiovascular disease, obesity, and mental illness. While poor sleep is common among those with cardiovascular disease, some researchers indicate that poor sleep can be a contributing cause. Short sleep duration of less than 7 hours is correlated with coronary heart disease and increased risk of death from coronary heart disease. Sleep duration greater than 9 hours is also correlated with coronary heart disease, as well as stroke and cardiovascular events. In both children and adults, short sleep duration is associated with the increased risk of obesity, with various studies reporting an increased risk of 45 to 55%. Other aspects of sleep health have been associated with obesity, including daytime napping, sleep timing, the variability of sleep timing, and low sleep efficiency. However, sleep duration is the most studied for its impact on obesity. Sleep problems have been frequently viewed as a symptom of mental illness rather than a causative factor. However, a growing body of evidence shows that they are both a cause and a symptom of mental illness. Insomnia is a significant predictor of major depressive disorder. A meta-analysis of 170,000 people showed that insomnia at the beginning of a study period indicated a more than twofold increased risk for major depressive disorder. Some studies have also indicated correlation between insomnia and anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicide. Sleep disorders can increase the risk of psychosis and worsen the severity of psychotic episodes. Animal studies suggest that prolonged sleep deprivation leads to the death of a large percentage of neurons and the locus coeruleus, a brainstem nucleus that is the main source of the neurotransmitter noradrenaline in the brain and is critically involved in many cognitive functions such as sustained attention, vigilance, learning, and memory. Due to the inability of central nervous system to regenerate lost neurons, sleeplessness-induced degeneration of the locus coeruleus might lead to a long-lasting, perhaps even permanent, impairments in associated functions. Sleep research also displays difference in race and class. Short sleep and poor sleep is observed more frequently in ethnic minorities than in whites. African Americans report experiencing short durations of sleep 5 times more than that of whites. possibly as a result of social and environmental factors. Black children and children in disadvantaged neighborhoods have much higher rates of sleep apnea than white children and respond more poorly to treatment. Sleep health can be improved through implementing good sleep hygiene habits. Having good sleep hygiene can help to improve your physical and mental health by providing your body with the necessary rejuvenation only restful sleep can provide. Some ways to improve sleep health include going to sleep at a consistent time every night, avoiding any electronic devices such as televisions in the bedroom, getting adequate exercise throughout your day, and avoiding caffeine in the hours before going to sleep. Another way to greatly improve sleep hygiene is by creating a peaceful and relaxing sleep environment. Sleeping in a dark and clean room with things like a white noisemaker can help facilitate restful sleep. Drugs and diet. Drugs which induce sleep, known as hypnotics, include benzodiazepines, although these interfere with REM. Non-benzodiazepine hypnotics such as azopilone, lunesta, Zalapon, Sonata, and zolpidem, ambien, antihistamines such as dihepnihydramine, Benadryl, and toxylamine alcohol ethanol, despite its rebound effect later in the night and interference with REM. Barbiturates, which have the same problem, melatonin, a component of the circadian clock and released naturally at night by the pineal gland, and cannabis, which may also interfere with REM. Stimulants, which inhibit sleep, include caffeine, an adenosine antagonist, amphetamine, MDMA, amphetamine entheogens, and related drugs, cocaine, which can alter the circadian rhythm, and methamphetamine, which acts similarly, and other anaphylatic drugs like modafinil and armodafinil with poorly understood mechanisms. Consuming high amounts of the stimulant caffeine can result in interrupted sleep patterns and sometimes sleep deprivation. This vicious cycle can result in drowsiness, which can then result in a higher consumption of caffeine in order to stay awake the next day. This cycle can lead to decreased cognitive function and an overall feeling of fatigue. Dietary and nutritional choices may affect sleep duration and quality. One 2016 review indicated that a high carbohydrate diet promoted a shorter onset to sleep and a longer duration of sleep than a high fat diet. A 2012 investigation indicated that mixed micronutrients and macronutrients are needed to promote quality sleep. A varied diet containing fresh fruits and vegetables, low saturated fat, and whole grains may be optimal for individuals seeking to improve sleep quality. High-quality clinical trials on long-term dietary practices are needed to better define the influence of diet on sleep quality. In culture, anthropology. Research suggests that sleep patterns vary significantly across cultures. The most striking differences are observed between societies that have plentiful sources of artificial light and the ones that do not. The primary difference appears to be that pre-light cultures have more broken up sleep patterns. For example, people without artificial light might go to sleep far sooner after the sun sets, but then wake up several times throughout the night, punctuating their sleep with periods of wakefulness perhaps lasting several hours. During pre-industrial Europe, Biphasic bimodal sleeping was considered the norm. Sleep onset was determined not by a set bedtime, but by whether there were things to do. The boundaries between sleeping and waking are blurred in these societies. Some observers believe that nighttime sleep in these societies is most often split into two main periods. The first characterized primarily by deep sleep, and the second by REM sleep. Some societies display a fragmented sleep pattern in which people sleep at all times of the day and night for shorter periods. In many nomadic and hunter-gatherer societies, people sleep on and off during the day or night, depending on what is happening. Plentiful artificial light has been available in the industrialized West since at least the mid-19th century, and sleep patterns have changed significantly everywhere that lighting has been introduced. In general, people sleep in a more concentrated burst throughout the night, going to sleep much later, although this is not always the case. Historian A. Roger Eckerich thinks that the traditional pattern of segmented sleep, as it is called, began to disappear among the urban upper class in Europe in the late 17th century, and the change spread over the next 200 years. By the 1920s, the idea of the first and second sleep had receded entirely from our social consciousness. Eckerich attributes the change to increases in street lighting, domestic lighting, and the surge of coffee houses, which slowly made nighttime a legitimate time for activity, decreasing the time available for rest. Today, in most societies, people will sleep during the night, but in very hot climates, they may sleep during the day. During Ramadan, many Muslims sleep during the day rather than at night. In some societies, people sleep with at least one other person, sometimes many, or with animals. In other cultures, people rarely sleep with anyone except for an intimate partner. In almost all societies, sleeping partners are strongly regulated by social standards. For example, a person might only sleep with the immediate family, the extended family, a spouse, or romantic partner. Children of a certain age, children of a specific gender, peers of a certain gender, friends, peers of equal social rank, or with no one at all. Sleep may be an actively social time, depending on the sleep groupings, with no constraints on noise or activity. People sleep in a variety of locations. Some sleep directly on the ground, others on a skin or blanket, others sleep on platforms or beds. Some sleep with blankets, some with pillows, some with simple headrests, some with no head support. These choices are shaped by a variety of factors such as climate, protection from predators, housing type, technology, personal preference, and the incidence of pests. In mythology and literature, sleep has been seen in culture as similar to death since antiquity. In Greek mythology, Hypnos, the god of sleep, and Thanatos, the god of death, were both said to be children of Nyx, the goddess of night. John Donne, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Percy Bysshe Shelley, John Keats, and other poets have all written poems about the relationship between sleep and death. Shelley describes them as both so passing, strange, and wonderful. Keats similarly poses the question, can death be sleep when life is but a dream? Many people consider dying in one's sleep is the most peaceful way to die. Phrases such as big sleep and rest in peace are often used in reference to death, possibly in an effort to lessen its finality. Sleep and dreaming have sometimes been seen as providing the potential for visionary experiences. In medieval Irish tradition, in order to become a filly, the poet was required to undergo a ritual called the Imbis Forosani. in which they would enter a mantic trance-like sleep. Many cultural stories have been told about people falling asleep for extended periods of time. The earliest of these stories is the ancient Greek legend of Epimenides of Knossos. According to the biographer Diogenes Laertius, Epimenides was a shepherd on the Greek island of Crete. One day, one of his sheep went missing, and he went out to look for it, but became tired and fell asleep in a cave under Mount Ida. When he awoke, he continued searching for the sleep, but could not find it. So he returned to his old farm, only to discover that it was now under new ownership. He went to his hometown, but discovered that nobody there knew him. Finally, he met his younger brother, who was now an old man, and learned that he had been asleep in the cave for 57 years. A far more famous instance of a long sleep today is the Christian legend of the 7 sleepers of Ephesus, in which 7 Christians flee into a cave during pagan times in order to escape prosecution, but fall asleep and wake up 360 years later to discover, to their astonishment, that the Roman Empire is now predominantly Christian. The American author Washington Irving's short story Rip Van Winkle, first published in 1819 in his collection of short stories The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon Gent, is about a man in colonial America named Rip Van Winkle who falls asleep on one of the Catskill Mountains and wakes up 20 years after the American Revolution. The story is now considered one of the great classics of American literature. In art. Of the dramatic representations of sleep in art, physician and sleep researcher Meyer Kreyer wrote, "Artists have intense fascination with mythology, dreams, religious themes, and parallel between sleep and death, reward, abandonment of conscious control, healing, a depiction of innocence and serenity, and the erotic." This has been a narration of the Wikipedia article for sleeping. I hope you have enjoyed. And may you have a safe journey through the dream realm.